well, if they're not gonna release the Smash Bash results, I'm gonna have to go get them myself. This joke was so much funnier before Matt released the results, like midway through me making this video. Some of you may know that I was in Zagreb early in July for Gardens of Hecate's Forbidden Psalm event, term 2024. Long story short, it was sick as hell. I got to meet a ton of cool people and put faces on friends that I'd only ever chatted with over the web. I also saw a ton of insanely cool models that people had sent in for the event, including some made by my friends Lazare and Rojas Noirlac. Seeing all of these beautiful models and the little backstories that people had come up with got me thinking about the playing aspect of the hobby more. I don't play a ton, not out of distaste really, just we have a tiny community of Kitbashers locally who are down to play indie games, and we're not allowed to play indies at the store. But playing with models from across the world got me thinking about games as like interactive exhibits. I want to show my models in game more, and I want to see models in that context as well. That light bulb going off was the kick I needed to go back to my Necron project. I've been chatting with my friend Duane about 4th edition 40k. It seemed rad, simple, and flavorful. And now that was my goal for this little army. So I picked up some of my old warriors that I got in my initial haul and started reposing them. Because the aim was to play city fight, I wanted some flayed ones to enjoy the infiltration capabilities. I'm being a little loose with the base size and the flayishness of these guys. They'll be more like tech knights, I guess. The previous Necrons I painted woke up on an already dead world, where they had been used by generation of artists as canvases. They started doing it themselves as a way to honor the long-gone people of their host world. These flayed ones were subject to more radical art, and they love it. Think more of a Don Quixote type of guy and less of a evil murder robot. I really like how tall these old warrior models get when you get rid of the janky squatting pose. They feel properly menacing. These were built with Bretonnian bits, Cities of Sigmar bits, Stormcast, Victrix, and Lumineth bits. It felt really cool just to kitbash in a freeform way after a long bout of sculpting from pretty rigid reference. Honestly, I'd encourage everyone to do this way more. Find unusual usages for shapes and parts. Let the kitbashing tell the story, make your miniatures look interesting, and narrative will start flowing from that. I don't really care about the coherency of the culture who made these guys the way they are. I care about the fact that they were made, touched, that they are the trace of something gone. These kind of broad themes always take me further creatively than just a super defined narrative. In my last video, I showed you one way to avoid having to paint freehands. Well, we're keeping the lazy saga going in this one as well. Instead of store-bought decals, we're going to use a Magic the Gathering card. Commons are usually cheap and plentiful. If you don't play, just ask your local game store to keep their draft chest for you. The art is kind of all over the place in modern sets, but you'll probably find something you like in there. The first step is to cut up the little guy to shape. Once I have the rough pattern down, it's time to peel the cardboard layers. Very gently remove the back, then the blue core, and you should have a nice floppy piece of paper left. Then with varnish glue, which I'm pretty sure that's just what Mod Podge is, I coat the shield and apply my decal. Another layer goes over top and the shield is left to dry. And that is a cute little shield. It was my first time trying this technique, so it was a little messy. I think with more practice it'll look even better and even more flush. If you try this, please show me some pictures of the result. Right, the other model I'm working on in this video is a proxy for a spider. I don't have a spider and I like the big tall boys a lot, so It'll do great for my 4th edition army. I very quickly sculpted some pieces of tile on the legs and the carapace. On one side I filled the entire shell with milliput and drew a little mosaic. It's real easy, you'll see. You just plonk down some putty, use your tools to roughly draw into it, and then with your needle texture the drawing with tiny squares, keeping different areas separate with, for example, different orientations of the tiles. I was really wanting to do something more antique and focused on archaeology for this squad. The Byzantine mosaics of saints were always like one of the coolest things that would drag my attention in history textbooks in high school and stuff, so that was my main inspiration. And we'll make the inspiration a little more clear with heavy use of gold and browns and stuff like that. This model is kind of annoying to modify. I had to paint it before assembly and then go back for a second step, because I'm adding a tree on this thing's back. I used milliput to make a big chunk of soil and then glued my wire tree on there. To bulk up the twisted wire, I used Sennelier acrylic putty. Once again, please sponsor me, Sennelier. I love your products. Give me money, please. It comes in a giant bag, and as usual with art supplies, it's way cheaper than the same product sold by a miniature focused brand. The putty dries slightly off-white with a bit of a rough texture. Shrunk a bit while drying, but that's expected. For the bark, I wanted to copy the texture of this piece of wood, so I whipped out my Oyumaru to try and make a texture plate. That failed miserably. Detail was way too shallow, the thermoplastic stuck to the branch at one point. It's just an awful time overall. So I did a bit of hand sculpting instead. It didn't take all that long, and I'm decently happy with how it turned out. And to complete the look, I added some roots poking out from beneath the soil. For the canopy, I mixed some foam flocking with glue and layered it on the branches. After one layer was dry, I added more, but not too much because I didn't want the model to be more top heavy. To finish sealing the leaves, I dropped some alcohol on them, followed by watered down PVA. Unlike the last tree I showed on this channel, I made the foliage before priming. As is, the mini was kind of lacking in color contrast, so I wanted to paint the leaves pink. In practice, that kind of just made my life more complicated than it could have been. Painting this stuff absolutely sucked. It did not want to let the paint flow or be absorbed at all. I think the end result is fine, but I would have been better off just mixing my flocking with paint from the start, at least just to get a lighter base to work from. You're gonna see me paint things a little differently than in my first Necron video. I do that a lot, and you should too. Tastes and skill levels change. These guys are globally a little more colorful, but most importantly I tweaked the shadows. I think the original video had its art in the right place, but after staring at those models for a while, it struck me that the pigments from the purple oil were a little too light in the spots where they had gathered. So I'm going back to my trusty old acrylics for this one. It takes a little more time, but it's almost 38 degrees when I record this, and I'm not really feeling the thinner fumes right now. Honestly, I kind of had a hard time with this project. But maybe it was the fact that I was back to painting at home after meeting some hobby friends. Maybe it was because the heat was so brutal I really couldn't do anything properly. I restarted the paint jobs a couple times and really got myself frustrated for a while in there. I'm glad I pushed through to finish these though. My frustration with the models in this video mostly comes from the paint job and how it's not really living up to the kitbashing in my opinion. I feel like I'm hitting that getting worse period right now. But I also know that I can't get out of that feeling without actually practicing. Well, maybe next time I'll practice when the paint isn't drying between the palette and the model. I legit think the heat had a terrible effect on my mood and skill while working on this project. This 4th ed project isn't going away or anything. I still think playing with these is going to be the key to me actually kind of loving them. Well, I do think the big guy is still missing something. Oh yeah, that's much better. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. That was a short video for a pretty long project. Still, I hope you liked it. Big thanks to everyone who picked up the Art Goblins bundle while it was available. If you would like to support the channel, you can always buy a copy of my game if you haven't already. Or, you know, just do the YouTube thing everyone asks. I still have a one-sided feud with a couple people on this site, and I would love it if I could just smoke them in terms of subscriber numbers. Also, a little channel announcement. I am going to be at Camping Kitbash from the 13th to the 15th of September in Ghent. It's a cool little event. I'm very excited to go. I'm very excited to meet people. If you are there, come say hi. I'll probably have some stuff in my backpack for you. Anyway, thanks again. I'll see you in the next one where I teach you how to count cars.
It's not bad. It's
Okay. I don't like the look of this. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, as a kid, you're like, you gotta drink a coffee.
What the fuck is this?